Okay, guys, we're back. Yeah, so anyways, part of our New Year catch-up, I thought we would talk about a few more things. I actually rather enjoyed the World Cup in Qatar. The matches were quite exciting. Probably the whole thing was an enormous fix, but it was a little bit of a distraction from the normal things we watch and take account of. Immense amount of hypocrisy going on, same as COP26 or whatever. But that's what we expect, isn't that so? So I also wanted to talk about a big news story that happened down in New Zealand, and that was baby Will and the blood transfusion story. Seems to have had quite a happy ending. I think that woke an enormous a lot of people up, and particularly it's relevant to everybody who might need an operation, which is pretty much encompasses everybody, isn't it? Because no one ever knows what sort of blood are you going to be given. And you could see there the New Zealand government absolutely desperate to set that precedent that you can't start specifying but which blood you want. But it did come out in the court hearings that the blood the blood bank had to admit that the people who've had this stuff, their blood does contain remnants of the mRNA, whatever, for at least 10 to 14 days. Right, so they had to actually admit that. So that's now a precedent in court. So it's great that a family took that stand at a great cost and stress to themselves in order to bring that to so many people's attention. What it reminded me a lot at, now, if you guys aren't in the UK or if you've forgotten, look up the name Aisha King. It was a little boy, I think you spell it A-Y, E-S-H-A, King, normal spelling. This little boy was the youngest in a family of quite a few. It might have been a family of 7, and the parents were Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, it was about 7 years ago, and what broke the news, actually, it could be longer than that now, actually, it's quite a while back, but it broke the news that this Jehovah's Witness family didn't want their child to have this vital treatment for his brain cancer or his brain tumor, and they'd abducted the child from the hospital and fled. So the media were all running the narrative that it's the totally unreasonable, religiously wacky parents, it's blah, blah, blah. However, these parents were clued up, particularly the father. They took their little boy, they managed to get, I think it was Southampton Hospital, but they managed to get him out the hospital. They got him to Spain where they had a flat, and he did a YouTube video putting his side of the story in across, and went absolutely viral. And the key to it was they had this special technology, a machine, I think it was some sort of laser technology, I can't remember what the machine was called. They didn't have one of these machines in the UK. The clap for the NHS. Waste their money on all these very iffy positions to do with, all the whole diversity, or it's not even diversity, is it? It's all inclusivity, I don't know. Climate change, they'll spend money on anything, but not these machines, which would be very helpful for people's health. So anyhow, the Czech Republic did have one of these machines, and this father had done his research, and for the type of brain cancer his child had, these were amazingly effective with minimal damage. Whereas the hospital in Southampton, you can look all this up, it's all documented, it was all on Wikipedia, the doctors were insisting on using radiotherapy that would have rendered the child a vegetable. I mean, this technology was A, unlikely to really work, and B, it was so damaging to the brain tissue of a young child, I think he was 4 at the time, that it was a disastrous course of action. Yet for some reason, like in New Zealand, doctors tend to get very stubbornly set, and they are right, and they insist on it, and if they have to get the courts to keep the child hostage, they are insisting on doing, their course of action. When the father had the money and was prepared to pay for the plane trip and all the money for his child to have this treatment in the Czech Republic, and they wouldn't, in Southampton, I believe it was Southampton, I might be wrong, the doctors were having this issue with the parents where they couldn't get the child released, that they actually had to kidnap the child and take the child to Spain. And if it weren't for the father having access to YouTube, which goes to show you how important social media is, he would have been demonized, and they would have all said, he's Jehovah's Witness, mad, don't want the baby to have. They were doing that with baby Will as well, insinuating that the parents don't want the child to have the operation, when that is not the story. He wanted the child to be treated, but with the best technology, in the most efficient way, with the least pain to the child, and with the best prospects for the child. These parents want the very, very best for their child, and they demonized mad. So the story had a happy ending. only because the father got the message out on YouTube and so many people woke up and were so supportive. They eventually got their little boy, the Czech Republic. He had the treatment, and last I looked on YouTube, he's having a pretty normal life. He's had almost a complete recovery, and while I suppose there might be some lingering issues, the prognosis has been astounding. Whereas the prognosis that he was given here in the UK with that other treatment was probably wouldn't be alive today. So I think that story of Will reminded me again of the story of that other little boy, Aisha King. And again, there were the religious parents, the parents who'd done their own research, the parents who were very savvy, the parents who wanted what was best, coming up against a system that was belligerent, absolutely belligerent. To what end? I mean, what was in it for them? Nothing. I think they just have to protect their image, their protocols, and they know that if one person starts pushing out and wanting more, we're going to have to do it for everyone. So this is what you get when you've got communism in healthcare. Nationalized or collectivized health is communism. They take choice away because you have to get the same treatment everyone else is. And if you want different treatment, well, then it's, especially for a child, then it's going to be a problem because they can take your guardianship away and make the child a ward of court and force whatever they want, where against the issue, what's the name of the parent. So another example of why communism is absolute nonsense. Okay, I wanted to talk about, someone left me a comment saying something about, I'm another astrologer pushing her opinions rather than just doing the reading, and it was about Russia. And it was actually a video where I'd talked about Russia in prophecy. So I don't think it was even my opinions. I was talking about Russia in prophecy, right? And just as a talking point. But the whole thing's not over yet. I mean, it hasn't reached a conclusion. So how would anyone know who's right and wrong anyway? And, sorry to disappoint anyone, this is also an opinion channel, and I will continue to give my opinions. This is my channel at the end of the day, isn't it? And, I mean, most of you guys come here for that reason. I mean, you don't just hear some really bland broadcast about this and that and the other. And then, I mean, if someone else is getting the information from the mainstream news, then obviously they're going to think that maybe my perspectives are wrong, but this war is, or alleged war, I'm not quite sure what sort of war this is. It seems to be being fought along World War I pace, but anyway, it will continue, but there are problems, and Russia is in the ascendancy, and Russia will come out on top, and that doesn't mean I'm pro-Putin, pro-Russia necessarily. I may or may not be. I mean, the jury's out. I mean, a lot of people have been putting up this World Economic Forum thing where they actually want to destroy Ukraine, pile in money by BlackRock, and then rebuild it as a smart country, a technological hub, which will be the prototype for other smart cities, smart countries around the world, AI-dominated countries. So you don't know. I mean, Putin could be in on it. They could all be in on it, trying to destroy that country to just turn it into this sort of AI-controlled, dystopian, a technological Armageddon. I mean, there is that. I don't think they're going to succeed. I notice a lot of people are getting quite aware of the whole 15-minute city issue that they want to roll out in Oxford, but there are other cities around the world want to hone in on: Milan, Paris, Melbourne, I think LA, New York, Belfast. They want to turn all these kind of cities into ultra-controlled, segmented grids where your movement between grids and that is tightly controlled. I think if you, as long as you're using public transport, you're fairly free, but in terms of using your own car, not so much. If you can see on my getter here, quite amusing how it's come to light during the cold weather, particularly in the US, how these electric cars just don't cut the mustard. There you go. Cold weather reduces electric vehicle EV range, increases charging times. Yeah, the battery can't hold as much charge at very cold temperatures. And also, Amazing Polly did quite a fun one where some woman in Canada couldn't get into the car because she needed a thumbprint to get in instead of a key. And then it was frozen. I mean, there's nothing like old-fashioned buttons and knobs, right? Because you can always kind of fix things. When everything's digital and it's all push button or going on a scan, your fingerprint, voice ID, that is when things tend to go wrong. And I'm quite pleased that a lot of people, through their purchase of electric vehicles, are waking up to the fact that these things just aren't reliable, they don't deliver, and God, are they good for anything?